Thank you. And Rachel, there's nothing wrong with paper. So this is a testimony of God's pursuit of me. As I was praying and thinking about what I would be talking about this morning, this theme came up. And even Mark Berry had specifically used that term in his own testimony. But my story starts even before Hope Church. I came to the Lord as a freshman in college, and that was even before Hope Church started. Yes, I'm that old. The beginning of my freshman year, a guy on my floor who was part of a Christian ministry called the Navigators came and shared the gospel with me. And I heard it, but I was like, okay, that's nice. Thanks for sharing that with me, or telling me about this. But God pursued me all that year. And it was about this time, April, right around Easter of that freshman year, that God really broke me down. And I relented, and, there's a picture of me up there. Wow. And I asked the Lord to be my Lord and Savior. And over my college years, I really grew. The fellowship of the ministry was great. We had midweek Bible studies, much like Hope Groups. We had Friday night teachings and fellowship, a lot like iFire. And I did go to church with others, but at that time I wasn't really integrated into a full church, that church body. Fast forward a few years to 1991. I was a graduate working at Ford Motor Company. But I was back here, and I didn't have that fellowship. I did become involved in a local church, but over time, some poor decisions, sinful decisions on my part, made it necessary for me to stop being in fellowship with that church. And consequently, my own walk with God was fractured. And so I drifted along for a couple years. In 1994, I was working at the Ford plant in Saline. I was supervising on an afternoon shift, working 10 to 12 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week for about 6 months. And one April day that I actually was home, my phone rang and I answered it, and there was a woman inviting me to a relatively new church for their, I guess this would be their second birthday, but for their first birthday service that was coming up. And that woman was Nora Manwiller. There's a whole story about that, but I'll leave that for another time. But I did come and for that first birthday service. And I don't know, they probably know better. In my recollection, there might have been 50 to 60 people there. Probably only about 7 or 8 who are actually in this room today. But I met another young single man that I could connect with, and that was Carl Thummel. Yep, there he is over there. And but I didn't go back right away. And a couple months went by, and that friend who first shared the gospel with me at Purdue came for a weekend visit. And I was like, well, I got to take him to church somewhere. And so I was like, yeah, I liked that Hope Church. And so we came back. I need to say that between that time, Pastor Paul had called me once or twice and talked with me over the phone and kind of got my background story. But we went that day, and Pastor Paul came up afterwards and really encouraged me and said, hey, if you need to kind of get off the fence here, get moving, and really encourage me to start coming on a regular basis. And so I did. And so I started going to a Hope group that William Boyer led. He and his wife, Debbie, and Carl was there also. And over the next year or so, I became involved in ministry teams. I was part of the worship team, and I really became integrated into the church family. But then my assignment at work had changed. I was working in Dearborn, and they said, hey, you're going to go work 5 days a week in Benton Harbor, Michigan. You're going to live in a hotel room Monday through Friday. And it was like, I just got like, that's like, if you ever travel by yourself, 1 or 2 nights is bad. And then when you do this 5 days a week for 13 weeks in a row, it gets really bad. But God continued to relentlessly pursue me there. And Pastor Paul, I'm sure it was about every week, once or twice, would call me. We'd talk about the worship songs for the coming week. But also Wade Hoppy would call me and just encourage me. And we'd talk about what I was reading in the Bible. And then one of the most precious things that he did now and again was he would put his children on the phone to talk with me. And Grace, wherever she is, I saw her here earlier, she would talk to me for about 2 minutes, and Samuel, and then Benjamin, and even Ruthie would even say, "Hi, Mr. Rick," and it just really encouraged me. And I could tell, I know, maybe not at the time, but looking back, that God was pursuing me even during the weeks when I couldn't be in proximity to the body. So that was an opportunity for me to drift away possibly, but God wouldn't let me, and He pursued me to stay involved. So I made it through that period. I came back, and my relationship with and integration in the church was stronger. I joined with Wade in assisting him to lead his Hope group. I continued in my service on the worship team. Later, I became treasurer for a while. I also got to know some of the young guys that Carl and his ministry with InterVarsity had a house full of younger men that over time I got to become friends with a couple of them and help even in some mentoring with them. And so my involvement in ministry grew. So in conclusion, I look back and I see that God pursued me in college through the Navigators. And then when I drifted away, He pursued me again through Hope Church, through the pastor and people here. I know you guys, as I have been here 28 years, I have seen God actively, relentlessly pursue many of you. Some of my don't know, but a lot of it I do. A lot of you, I have been able to see that. So I want to encourage you that God is a pursuer of individuals. He wants to be in relationship with us, and has and still does through His faithful servants here at Hope Church. Thank you.